Scrooge appears on your timeline, spreading love, feeling so divine. Tune in, don't miss a single drop. Unwrap joy till the beat stops.
What it do, Team No Tea? We are back for day 2 of our 12 days of Christmas sitcoms. Today, we are tackling Martin, season 5, episode 10. I'm going to put this little thing up here as a reminder of what we are looking for in each episode. Now, let's get into Scrooge, season 5, episode 10 of Martin Lawrence. Okay, so this episode of Martin takes on the classic story of A Christmas Carol or Scrooge. So in this episode, Martin is the character that is playing our Scrooge. And in the beginning of the episode, we see Gina getting ready to go down to Nipsey's and do a buffet style meal for the homeless, I believe. So they all intend to go down to Nipsey's and do this, but Martin says he'd prefer to just sit at home and watch the football game. He said, you know what? I helped pay for all this stuff. I don't really need to be involved with the charitable acts after the fact. I did enough. He wanted to send Gina to Nipsey's with the Christmas gifts for everybody else, so Pam, Tommy, and Cole are getting Christmas gifts for Martin. And Gina asks Martin what he got for each person. They were the most cheap and impersonal gifts that you could give to a person. And he says that basically he wanted to save money so that he could get himself a brand new pair of Jordans, because we know how Martin is about them kicks. Now, suddenly, there's a knock at the door. And guess what? Surprise! We got our surprise guest right away. Our surprise guest is none other than Jackie Chan. That's right, Jackie Chan knocks at the door. He thinks he's at Shanae's house. He's coming over there with gifts for Shanae, and he wanted to kick it with Shanae. And that made Martin say, man, Shanae must got that ill nana. Now, if you know what the ill nana is, I hope we never find out whether or not Shanae has that good, okay? So anywho, Gina decides she's just gonna leave Martin to his football game, and she's gonna go on down to Nipsey's by herself. Now, Martin, for somebody who was so interested in watching this football game, as soon as he sat down on the couch, my man went to sleep. And I say sleep, I mean he was out like a light. Like, as soon as his head hit the pillow, he was gone. And then we see the dreams start. The first dream that he had was of the ghost of Christmas past. And the ghost of Christmas past came in the form of Gina. She was in a beautiful white gown. She might even be considered a black angel. So, yep, you didn't think I was going to get there that quickly. We already talked about some of the fashion. Let me just explain. The fashion in 1996, when this episode came out, was right up my wheelhouse. Of course, that was during the era where I was like coming of age. There were examples in this episode of things that I most certainly could see myself wearing, specifically Gina and Pam. And of course, Jordans were all the rage. They still are all the rage, but that's not my jam. That's my sister. My sister is the Jordan queen. In our blast from Martin's past, we go back to an early Christmas, a Christmas where his mother was a single mother struggling to provide for him, and she would get him knockoff Christmas gifts. So, for instance, in this episode, little boy Martin, who did an outstanding job channeling a younger Martin, he sat down on a park bench to open up the one Christmas gift that he got, and it was what he thought were a pair of Chuck Taylors. Then a bunch of bullies come through the park and was like, well, let me see what you got there. And they look in his box and they were like, these ain't Chuck Taylors. These are Chuck Tylers. Now, we all know that our parents would mean so well when they go out and buy these little knockoff treats. But this is what's gonna get you jived on. We used to call it jiving. I don't know, roasting now is what they call it. You about to get roasted if you show up to school with some Chuck Tylers instead of Chuck Taylors. So this may inform us on why Martin is so adamant about having the latest gym shoes. Because this one little incident in his past kind of made him feel like that'll never be me again. If I grow up and I'm able to afford the best, I'm going to get myself the best. And in his mind, the best are Air Jordans. The second set of ghosts, yes, I said set, were the ghosts of Christmas Present. And the ghosts of Christmas Present came in the form of Tommy and Cole, looking like they stepped fresh out of a Run DMC video, and they took Martin down to Nipsey's so that he can hear how his friends talked about him when he wasn't around. Now, you saw Gina trying to stand up for her man because, we do that. Even though man can be wrong as two left shoes, we're going to try to find something right about it. That's what Gina was doing, but the friends know Martin like the backs of their hands. So they are well aware that he was about to bring them some complete and utter garbage for Christmas gifts, to include re-gifting a shirt that Cole gave him for Christmas. He's going to give that gift right back to Cole the next Christmas. For Tommy, he bought a box of Kleenex instead of getting him some monogrammed handkerchiefs, and I can't even remember what he got for Pam, but whatever it was, trust and believe it was not something that she neither wanted nor needed. Martin is selfish and he's cheap, and they talked about him. Nipsey talked about the tips that Martin would give him, like push away from the table, like don't go back for seconds, or don't dip that fry, anything to talk about his weight, because Nipsey's a little chubby. He was a little chubby. So Martin's friends don't consider him to be the most generous person in the world. And it got to a point where Gina couldn't even defend him anymore. So now Martin is all embarrassed with these two ghosts of Christmas Present, because this is what his friends think of him. This is how they talk about him when he's not around. And he's realizing that he deserves it. It's not like they're saying anything about him that's not true. What they're saying is the truth. So maybe this is something that he could work on. Let's hope that by the end of this episode, he has worked on those things. Finally, we have the Ghosts of Christmas Future. And we've already gone through Gina and Tommy and Cole. So the Ghosts of Christmas Future came in the form of Pam. And Pam had some stuff to show him. She showed him a future where he was in that apartment, the same apartment that he and Gina shares now, alone. And even worse, I don't know if it's worse or better, the only person who came around to check on Martin was Pam. Now they old, by the way, old. And he's still trying to roast Pam like he did back when they were younger, except for it seems like Martin is an invalid. He cannot take care of himself, and thus he needs Pam. She comes in and she feeds some shit that he don't want to eat, and she's just mean to him, but she's still there. And once he said something and he took one of his jokes just a step too far for this old Pam, she took his wheelchair and pushed his ass down the steps, y'all. Yep. Pushed him. She said, I'm through with it. I can't do it no more. So Martin realizes at this point that the way that he is behaving today, it could affect him tomorrow in a very, very negative ways. Gina leaves him. Tommy and Cole don't really want to have nothing to do with them. The only person that's coming around is Pam, and she comes around and abuses him. Even though he was verbally abusive to her, she was physically abusive to him. So I think now Martin may have learned a lesson. Unless he wants to get stuck with Pam for the rest of his life. So Martin wakes up. Oh my God. I need to shimmy on down to Nipsey's and be part of this holiday cheer and be happy for the life that I have and the friends that I have and the beautiful wife that I have before I don't have it anymore. So he also went to the mall first. He stopped off at the mall and he went and he got proper gifts for his friends. And he gave Nipsey a fat tip for all the times that he gave him bad advice as a tip. And then to top it all off, Martin sees a kid who was one of the homeless kids down there eating at Nipsey's for free. And this kid's shoes are tattered and worn and beat up with holes. And the little kid says he's going to put newspapers in them to keep his feet warm. Martin takes the shoes off his feet and gave them to the little boy. And you know what shoes those were? These weren't just any shoes. Those were the 12s. The brand new Jordans that he had just purchased for himself, he gave to that little homeless boy. Martin learned a lesson in this episode, and that lesson was that number one, you can't take this shit with you. Everything that you amass here, the fortune, all of the material things will not be here when you're gone. Your legacy could be, oh yeah, they dressed real nice, but they was a fucked up person. If you knew that that is the way people would think of you when you're gone, don't you think that you should do a whole lot more while you're here to make sure that that's not the case? That is the message, the underlying message that we got, not only from this episode, Scrooge, but also from A Christmas Carol. And it's also something that we can apply in our own lives, because you know that in the next episode of Martin, everything goes back to normal. They go back to the way that they typically behave, and their banter and their antics with one another does not change. But in this episode, we saw a major change in Martin, even if it was for only this episode. In this episode of Martin, for our elves on shelves, we got number one, the surprise guest with Jackie Chan. Number two, we saw a Black Santa. It was on an ornament, but it was a Black Santa nonetheless. We also, when we got the Nipseys, we heard This Christmas. So we got that song. One of the Trinity was in the episode. It's looking like that's all we got. I think we got the Black Angel because I said Gina looked like an angel. So Black Angel. That's all we got. I am shocked and surprised that in this episode of Martin, we didn't get the ho 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 joke. I really expected it. Now, there are other Christmas episodes of Martin, and I know he told the ho 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 joke. But in this episode, he did not. So we cannot mark that off on our list. Those are all of the elves on shelves that we could find in this episode of Martin. So tell me, have you ever seen this episode of Martin? I know you have. If you have, tell me what you thought about it down in the comments below. While you're there, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, turn your notifications on, do all that stuff. Be festive. Leave a festive comment. We got day 3 of 12 days of Christmas sitcoms coming up tomorrow, and I can't wait to share it with you. Until then, I will see you later. Peace.
Tasha Pierce on your timeline, spreading love, feeling so divine. Tune in, don't miss a single drop. Unwrap joy till the